Willkommen, guten Tag, and Achenflecken. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know where that came from. Anywho, how many of y'all know about German fairy tales? So, you may remember from my previous video that I know none of you watched, but I'm biracial, half white, and my particular brand of whiteness happens to come from Germany. So, whenever I would go on vacation and visit my grandmother, my Oma, she would read us German bedtime stories, and I'm not entirely certain of this, but it might have something to do with my many issues. Now, I wanted to make this video because it has come to my attention that nowhere near enough people in the Western world are aware of German fairy tales. Sure, we're aware of the more popular ones, like the ones done by Disney, or the ones the Brothers Grimm deemed worthy enough for their book. But on the whole, we don't seem to be as aware of the more gruesome fairy tales. And in my opinion, there is only one man who ever truly captured the essence of German storytelling. And that man's name is Wilhelm Busch. This guy. Wilhelm is largely considered to be one of the grandfathers of the modern comic strip, but one of his most well-known works was also one of his first works, Max and Moritz. The story was first penned in 1865 and depicts the downward spiral of a series of pranks performed by two young brothers named Max and Moritz. Obviously. There were 7 pranks in total, each ranging from "What the hell?" to "Jesus Christ!" Let's run through them, shall we? Warwort. Ah, how oft we read or hear of boys we almost stand in fear of. For example, take these stories of 2 youths named Max and Moritz, who instead of early turning their young minds to useful learning, often leered with horrid features at their lessons and their teachers. Look now at the empty head, he is for mischief always ready, teasing creatures, climbing fences, stealing apples, pears, and quinces, is of course a deal more pleasant and far easier for the peasant than to sit in schools or churches, fixed like roosters in their perches. But oh dear, oh dear, oh dearie, when the end comes sad and dreary, 'tis a dreadful thing to tell, that on Max and Moritz fell. All they did this book rehearses, both in pictures and in verses. Did I forget to mention that these are all poems? Well, they are. I'll spare you the rest of the book and just summarize. Erster Streich. So, it starts off talking about how wonderful it is to own and raise chickens, and then it says that this old widow named Frau Tibbetts owns 4 chickens, 3 hens, 1 rooster. So, Max and Moritz, being the little shits they are, decide to lay a trap by tying 4 small pieces of bread together with some string and left it in the hen house. When the chickens got to the trap, they choked on the bread and got tied up in the string. Long story short, the 4 chickens are now choked to death and hanging from an apple tree, and Frau Tibbetts is trying to cut them down whilst uncontrollably sobbing. So we're only 1 poem in, and we've psychologically scarred an old woman and murdered 4 chickens. Zweiter Streich. So staying with the old woman, she's a 19th century German peasant. She's not gonna throw the chickens away. She decides to cook them. You know, might as well get some use out of this trauma. So, Max and Moritz, being the little shits they are, smell the roasting chicken and decide, hey, we haven't accosted this old woman enough today. So, they climb on top of the roof with a fishing pole and start snatching the chickens from out of the hearth. Now, the widow is down in the basement getting some sauerkraut when she hears her dog barking at Max and Moritz. And when she gets back upstairs, the imps are gone and so is the chicken. She naturally assumed that the dog ate the chicken and proceeds to calmly and rationally beat the dog half to death with a ladle. Poem 2, and we're going strong with the animal abuse theme. Dritter Streich. Alright, this one's not as bad. There's a long segment at the beginning that's devoted to talking about the tailor named Buck, that apparently everyone in the village and the country loved. and outside his house was a fast-moving stream with a small bridge. So, Max and Moritz, being the little shits they are, decide to use a saw to cut most of the way through the bridge, and then lure the poor man onto said bridge. The bridge breaks, he falls into the stream, and becomes sick from the cold. When he finally claws his way out of the stream using a couple of geese, his wife lays him down on the table and presses a hot iron into his stomach. And just look at that picture. Jesus Christ.
Ow! 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 Ow!
This is why I have issues. Streich. Now this one is nowhere near as gruesome as any of the other ones, but I'm pretty sure it still constitutes attempted murder. The school teacher named Erlampel loved to smoke out of his pipe. Apparently it helped him with his digestion or something. So Max and Moritz, being the little shits they are, filled it with gunpowder! Also, this line. Now nose, hands, eyebrows, once like yours, now are black as any Moors. Oy vey. Fünfter Streich. Okay, I'll admit it. This one wasn't particularly hazardous to anyone's health, but this is still a personal nightmare of mine, and I do not appreciate it being put into children's book format. The first half of the poem is entirely devoted to saying how good nephews and nieces should treat their uncles. So, Max and Moritz, being the little shits they are, went out into the forest and gathered literal cornucopias of maybugs and put them in their Uncle Fritz's bed. Bed? His bed? So when the poor man decides to go to bed, he gets woken up by a swarm of maybugs crawling all over his body and biting. Jesus Christ!
I don't want to live on this planet anymore.
Sechter Streich. So, who likes cannibalism?
I'd try it. There's no way.
Alright, so they don't go full Santa Clarita, but still. Anyways, now it's Easter, and the twin terrors are next to the bakery, so they decide they've got a bit of a sweet tooth. So, Max and Moritz, being the little shits they are, sneak into the bakery through the chimney and fall face first into flour. Once they pick themselves back up, they climb onto a chair to reach some pretzels on the top shelf, and continuing this sudden theme of slapstick, the chair breaks and they fall face first into a trough? A trough of dough. Why there is a trough of dough in the middle of the room, I have no idea, but if you think that's weird, just wait. When they finally managed to pull themselves out of the trough, the baker walked in. He then proceeded to calmly and rationally roll them into brats and cook them. Relax, it's fine. They survived. They were able to nibble their way out of the crust. This is why I have issues. Letzter Streich. This last one is a doozy. So Max and Moritz, being the little shits they are, sneak into the farmer's grain house and cut holes in the bags. When the farmer picks up his sack, all the corn falls out, and the Hellions laugh at his misfortune. Put a pin in that for a second. Does anyone else remember that one scene from The Mummy?
Keep moving.
You know, nasty little fellows such as yourself always get their comeuppance.
They do?
Oh, yes. Always.
Yeah, that one. Keep that in mind. Well, taking the pin back out, the farmer grabbed both of them, shoved them in another sack, and hauled them off to the miller, where he then proceeded to have them ground alive into tiny pieces.
What are you doing in my swamp? What?
And no, this one is not a fake out like the last one, because we see their lifeless remains being eaten by ducks. Schloob. Do you really care? They were ground alive and fed to ducks. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Just let me compose myself. Well, there's not much to it really. It just runs through all the village people that were accosted by Max and Moritz, saying good riddance and that they shouldn't have spent their time playing pranks. But Jesus Christ, fratricide? Really? Well, in any case, it gives more perspective to this cutaway now, doesn't it?
Whoa, thanks for the vote of confidence. Geez, you're a bigger downer than a German bedtime story.
There once was a boy who liked to suck his thumbs. His mother asked him to stop, but he wouldn't. So she cut off his thumbs. Now he has no thumbs. Good night.
Hey, what?